This is not a test. This is your emergency broadcast system announcing the commencement of Phatts TV, sanctioned by PA Phatts and the non-genetically proven son. Any and all words have been authorized during the show. There is nothing off limits. Nobody is restricted from watching or participating in the show. It is a free-for-all. Commencing at the siren, any and all discussions will be legal for an extended period of time. Sports, politics, and any and all controversial topics will be talked about. You have been warned. May God be with us all.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Phatts TV on this Sunday night, August the 15th. I am PA Phatts, real name Jason. I'm in Phatts Studio A. Joining me in Phatts Studio B, deep in his underground bunker in Center County, Pennsylvania, the one, the only non-genetically proven son. How's it going?
It's going.
It's going.
You need a haircut.
Look at you combing your hair. Speaking of hair, you actually showered and stuff for this episode of Phatts TV tonight. Very good. Very good.
I did?
I'm proud of you. Proud of you.
I wore a hat all day.
Put a little cream or something in your little Brill cream or something in your hair tonight. Do a little styling and profiling.
We'll go with that.
Sure. So, about a month or 6 weeks ago, we started discussing potentially doing a bowling episode, primarily for Team Phatts members, but I wanted to open it up to whomever. Wanted to learn a little bit something about bowling. We are exactly 2 weeks away from the start of PJBT season number 23. For those of you that don't know, PJBT stands for the Pennsylvania Junior Bowlers Tour, which I am one of the assistant tournament directors, also the head play-by-play guy. Yes, we live stream just about every one of our tournaments, at least the finals. And I don't have a look for TV. I certainly don't have a voice for the internet either, but for some reason they keep me on every year doing that. So I must be doing something right, I guess. Who knows?
Or you're the only one that wants to do it.
Or I'm the only one. That's probably right. That's probably right. So, for those of you that may not belong to Team Phatts, by all means, we are always accepting membership into Team Phatts. Do we charge to be members of Team Phatts? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We have our own paraphernalia through EFX Apparel. We actually have 3 logos. We have the original PA Phatts logo. We have the Phatts TV logo. And we have the new Team Phatts logo. Let me see if I can pull that up for you. Should have came a little bit prepared. Didn't think about pulling up the logo. But let's see what we can find here. Here it is. So this is the Team Phatts logo, designed by the artistes at EFX Apparel. So you can have that logo, or any of the PA Phatts logos, added to your EFX Apparel for free. Yes, you heard that right. For free. All you have to do is tell Brian Krantz which one you want when you place your order. If you do want the new Team PA Phatts logo, you have to specifically say, I want the Team PA Phatts logo, so he knows exactly which one. I'm waiting for somebody to put all 3 logos on their shirt, their pants, their socks, their underwear, whatever they buy from EFX Apparel. Is that going to be you, non-genetically proven son?
No, probably not.
No, probably not.
Wouldn't put it past me to not throw a bowling ball this whole year.
Oh, wonderful. So you are actually becoming like me.
Well, the first semester I'm a little too busy to realistically do it.
Uh-huh.
And the second semester, we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see when it starts coming championship season if I feel like bowling or not.
Got ya. Hey, well, it would be nice. It would be your last season on the PJBT, and you do have to try to defend your title at the season-ending championship.
So I have to try to qualify.
Well, maybe you'll get lucky, bowl one event and win it, and then you're automatically qualified.
True.
Maybe. But there's a lot of members from Team Phatts going, no, you're not beating me. So good try. Good try.
I mean, I walked in the championship weekend with 2 practices and 1.
Yeah. Yeah, but hey, well, you're Team Phatts. What do you expect?
That's right.
You're Team Phatts. So anyway, speaking of walking into bowling centers, what a great way to segue into our first topic. So let's talk about going to tournaments, shall we? So, the non-genetically proven son is going to monitor the message board tonight. If there's any questions, by all means, ask any question you want. If we can answer it, we will answer it. We may not get to it right as the question is asked. There is a bit of a time delay between what we're doing and here. It's about 30 seconds-ish. So what you're hearing now, I actually said about 30 seconds ago. So non-genetically proven son, let me ask you a question. You're going to a tournament. Okay?
All right.
To a bowling center you've never been to before, let's say.
Okay.
What's the first thing you're looking for when you walk into the bowling center?
Well, I would have done something before I got to the bowling center.
Okay. Tell me what you would have done.
Try to figure out what lane surfaces are there.
Try to figure out what lane surface is. Good answer. Very, very good answer. Now, let's back up just a little bit. So I'm going to give you guys about 30 seconds from the time you hear this, so a minute in real time, to go get yourselves a notebook. See? Notebook. You're going to want to write stuff down. For you members of Team Phatts that are watching this, I better see this notebook with you all season long. Because you want to write stuff down at every single tournament you go to. So, go get your tournament, and we'll talk about something else for a minute. Now, go get it. So, by the way, since I'm old, the first thing that I look for when I walk into a bowling center, depending upon the length of the trip, is where's the bathroom. That's very important.
I don't worry about the bathroom.
Well, gotta remember I'm old, as I just said. So I'm looking for the bathroom because, number one, I'm probably going to have to go to the bathroom.
I'm figuring out, jeez.
Talk much?
Where to put my bowling balls.
Where to put your bowling balls. That's
pretty
pretty
I
important.
gotta carry a lot of them, so I'm probably, I'm in scratch, so we're gonna probably go over to like 7 and 8, 5 and 6. Throw them somewhere in there.
Yeah, got you.
Then we're gonna worry about checking in. Gotta stand in line.
Yeah.
Unless if you're me and you and we're the first ones there. Basically, because we have to be.
Yes. While I'm still trying to find the bathroom, usually. All right, so anyway, I hope you all have your notebooks now. So, what the non-genetically proven son said was very good. So if he's going to a bowling center he's never been to before, he wants to at least try to find out what lane surface they have. That is extremely important. Okay?
It'll affect what I'm going to bring to that tournament.
Absolutely. So, I'm sure he's thinking more of, is it wood or synthetic? I'm sure he's going to be a step or two ahead of just, is it wood or is it synthetic, right?
I would be most likely. First, that'd be my first question. Are we going on synthetic or are we going on wood?
Right. And let's face it, probably 85% of the bowling centers we go to, at least on the PJBT, have synthetic lines.
Right,
some of the wood centers we go to. My favorite little bowling center, East Lincoln, has wood. Jordan has wood. They might be the only two anymore.
It was Mountainville, but that place.
When Mountainville was, I think Midway has wood.
Midway does have wood.
Midway has wood. Those might be the only three that we go to.
They have very lacquered wood, though, if I remember correctly.
Okay. You want to explain what that means?
it's just gonna make it not play necessarily like wood, at least to start.
Yeah.
It's gonna make it a little more slick, so it'll
Yes.
play kind of in between wood and synthetic
Mhm.
when we start, but then it's gonna turn into wood very quickly.
Typically, bowling centers do that, so they, if I remember correctly, so they don't have to resurface them quite as often. That was something that came out in like the mid '90s, if I remember correctly, that there was something that you could coat on the wood so you don't have to resurface them quite as often. Because there used to be a time where basically you wanted to resurface your wood lanes every year, and you have to actually shut down for a couple days. So most places did it in the summertime, of course. All right, so how are you going to do that? Obviously, you're going to go to the bowling center's website and try to find pictures.
So yeah,
All right, so
Facebook.
Okay.
I would say 98% of bowling centers have a Facebook page,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and 98% of the time you'll see a picture with at least lanes in it, and you should be able to figure out from that picture.
Okay. So we're going to a tournament at XYZ Bowling Center. And we find their bowling center on Facebook, let's just say. And we see some pictures, and we could tell that they have synthetic surfaces.
Okay.
Is that where it stops for you, or does it
No.
go on to the next step?
Next step.
Next step. Okay.
Now we need to figure out if they're AMF lanes or Brunswick.
Okay. And what do we mean by that?
So, I mean, it's who makes them. But they do play differently.
They do. So Brunswick lanes are called basic. There's a bunch of different kinds.
Right.
Nowadays. But basically, the most commonly used, especially if they've gotten them in the recent past, for the what we would call Brunswick lanes, we're talking about pro anvil lanes. So what does pro anvil lanes look like? I happen to have a picture of pro anvil lanes. See how you segmented like it's almost like we rehearsed this, but we didn't. So this is a picture of a pro anvil lane. So what's the first thing we notice? It's all basically one color. That's really a good way to know it. I may be wrong when I say this. I don't know of any, off the top of my head, places that have anvil lanes that have tracers down lanes. I can't think of any off the top of my head. But I could be wrong on that. Doesn't Burks have SPLs? I'm pretty sure Burks has SPLs. But anyway, so this is what an anvil lane looks like. So it's that lighter colored wood, basically. All right. So what do we know about anvil lanes?
We know that they're slick.
Slicker.
Slicker.
Yes. So if slicker or not as slick as wood. Slicker. So what that means, boys and girls, is your ball's not going to slow down as quick.
Well, what does that mean? For people that may not know what that means.
That means less hook. What creates hook, basically, is your ball slowing down.
Slowing down and getting into a roll and starting to turn left for right-hander, right for left-hander.
Very good. Very good. So the anvil lane is the hardest surface, meaning between soft and hard. Not hard as in easy and hard. Hard as in soft and hard. All right? And then the other type of lane that you'll normally see, which we'll call the AMF, is called the
HPL
or SPL. Call it what you will. Where does that fall in between? Like, is it before the wood, after wood, but before the anvil lanes, or is it after the anvil lanes when we're talking about friction versus slick?
We're after wood, but we're before the Brunswick lane.
So we're in the middle.
In the middle.
In the middle. So we got a picture of SPLs, and this one's a lot easier to see. So, you've all seen lanes like this. This is the one where, like, the wood's a bunch of different, you got some boards that are lighter colors, some boards that are darker colors. Interestingly, this picture, they do not have lane tracers down lane at this bowling center, whatever this bowling center is.
Just for your information, that is not the lanes Burks has.
No, it's not. But this is typically what SPL lanes looks like.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the lane they used to have.
It is. Back in the day. So, that's a great way to tell if we're dealing with quote-unquote Brunswick lanes or quote-unquote AMF lanes, is looking at the color of the lanes. Is that going to tell it to you 100% of the time? I don't know. But it's certainly going to tell it to you more than it isn't going to tell it to you. So, the non-genetically proven son here has it correct. He's looking at that. He's trying to find that out before we go to a bowling tournament. If you can't find that out, that should be the first thing you are looking at as you walk into a tournament. Now, why is that important?
Well, because it could dictate whatever we're bowling on,
right,
how it's going to play and how it's going to break down.
So you had said earlier that you like to know even before we leave for a tournament, so you know what bowling equipment possibly to bring. Mm-hmm. So explain that if you would.
Well, so to a PJBT, I'm only probably going to bring 9 to a tournament.
And honestly, that's too many. Honestly.
It really depends. But for college, we could bring 6.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to know, are we bowling on a lot of friction? Well, then I'm not bringing my big hooking balls. Am I bowling on very little friction? Well, I need to make sure I have stuff that can hook. And vice versa, I'm going to need, some urethane, maybe some pearls that go really long so I can beat the friction that'll come.
Mm-hmm.
And just work around with what's going to go, what you think is going to happen. Because with PJBTs, we have the glory of knowing, are we bowling on a rec pattern or are we bowling on a sport pattern?
Yes.
So I could tailor my bag towards, okay, we're bowling on rec. I'm going to need stuff that gets down the lane because I know it likes to break down. I need stuff that's good for what we so-and-so call a house shot.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff that's good for that. Stuff creates a lot of angle. And then for a challenge, I need stuff, okay, now I need to create some area, try to make sure I'm controlling the pocket until it breaks down, and then I can get into the more angle stuff.
Got ya. Okay. So, we get to our tournament, we walk inside, we immediately see, these are anvil lanes. So, now I know that the surface is harder. So, the first thing that goes through my mind is the shot's probably going to play a little tighter than what you normally may see. Let's just say the place you practice at has SPLs or HPLs. So, yeah, you're probably going to need to adjust a little, maybe even start with a slightly stronger bowling ball than you would normally bowling on SPLs or HPLs. So, one of the main things that when I'm talking to the bowlers on the PJBTs is the lack of knowledge that they have when they're reading a lane graph sheet. It's amazing that the good caliber of bowlers that are like, we're talking 15, 16-year-olds, that I will tell them to, all right, so I'll show them a lane graph sheet or I'll take them up and I'm like, all right, so now explain this to me, and they have no clue on explaining it to me. And it amazes me that they could have this much talent but have never taken the time to learn to read a lane graph sheet. So that's really what I wanted to spend most of the time on tonight, was dissecting a lane graph sheet. So the one that I chose, I wanted to choose a harder pattern, one that had certain specific characteristics. So I chose Statue of Liberty. Now, for PJBT, we haven't bowled on Statue of Liberty in probably about 4 years now. I know we've bowled on it before.
The last time I remember bowling on it was the first ever year of Masters.
Okay. I'll take your word on that, because you remember all that stuff and I don't. So, all right. So I'm going to pull up the lane graph sheet, and I'm going to try to play around with some things here to make sure we see exactly the parts of it. We're going to go over line by line by line. So I want to make sure that we see everything on this. So I'm going to be moving stuff around and enlarging it and shortening it. And so, all right. So here's our lane graph sheet, and I don't have the bottom of it up right now, but when people typically look at this, all they want to do is focus on this big picture on the right. Daniel, in your opinion, how important is this big picture on the right?
Little to none.
Exactly. It is truly one of the least important things on this lane graph sheet.
I would say, if you have no idea what you're looking at, and you after this whole next whatever we're about to do, you still don't understand it, just look at one or two things, and I can explain this later.
Yes,
there's one or two things you can look at if you don't understand it that'll tell you everything you need to know.
Yes, there's actually, talking to people and watching videos of people that really know the sport of bowling, there's 4 things that they look at on these sheets, and that's it. I look at a couple more. I will say this bottom picture is a lot more important than this picture on the right. A lot more important.
For sure.
But let's start at the top.
Okay.
So, zooming in. Oil pattern distance, 47 feet. That's pretty important to know.
So that would tell us, well, if you don't know, a lane is 60 feet and 6 inches. So that only tells us we only get 13 feet of no oil for our ball to hook.
Mm-hmm. So, does this mean that it's transferring oil from where the oil is stored in the machine onto the brush for the full 47 feet?
No.
The answer is no, but the answer is also it could. It could.
But, yeah, we'll leave it there. It could, but not for this pattern. It does not.
Right, and we'll show you why in a little bit. But it is laying oil. The brush that goes in a counterclockwise fashion in the machine as it goes down the lane is laying oil for 47 feet. So that brush is actually making contact with the lane for 47 feet, and then it raises itself back up off the lane. Basically, that's what it means. So earlier when I said that there's 4 things that like somebody who's really good will look at, that is actually absolutely one of the 4.
Obviously, that's going to help us determine what ball to throw and where we want to stand. If we look at nothing else, that'll help us.
Yes. And if you know nothing about the sport of bowling, you could use what's known as the quote-unquote rule of 31.
Correct.
To know where you want to be at the end of 47 feet. So the rule of 31 basically says you take the oil pattern, the distance, you subtract 31, and you want to be at that board at the end of the pattern. So by using 31, theoretically, you want your bowling ball at about board 16 as it exits the pattern. Now,
Correct.
The rule of 31 is very, very, very generic. I will say that right now.
Because I'm going to throw out there, if you were at 16, You're going jersey or high?
Well, depending upon how your release is, yes.
Yes, because 16 is actually left of the pocket already. So,
I mean, you will agree with me when I say that there's bowling centers that we know of where you could be at 5 at the end of this pattern and you'll hit pocket.
There are a few that I can think of.
Yes.
For sure. Then there are some where I could be at 15 and it won't move.
Right. Yes. So again, the rule of 31 is very, very generic.
But it's a good starting point.
It is. It's a good starting point. All right. The next thing, the reverse brush drop. Now, for the kiddies that I coach, I have asked every single one of them, what does reverse brush drop mean? Not a one of them could tell me, including the person that's on this little exercise with me right now.
I know what reverse brush drop means.
After I explained it to you.
No, I know what it means. Don't even try to throw me under the bus.
I just threw you under the bus. Now, I will say this. Out of the 4 things that these guys on this video, this is actually one of the 4. Believe it or not. This is one of the 4. This is important. So, for those of you that don't know, in Kegel machines, which most bowling centers have Kegel machines these days, the oil gets laid both forward and reverse. So it strips and oils at the same time as it's going down the lane. It's stripping in the front and oiling in the back. Okay? As the machine comes back up the lane, it can, if you choose to, have it lay more oil. The vast majority of your bowling patterns are going to have both forward and reverse oil. Now, why? Why would you lay oil both going down the lane and coming back up the lane? You could lay a lot of oil on the lane at one time if you choose to.
Yes.
Especially on the newer Kegel machines, you could lay a lot of oil at once.
Right.
So why do you need to lay oil coming back up the lane?
Well,
get out your notebooks, kiddies.
In generic terms, the forward oil is the shape of the pattern we're laying down, and the reverse oil is the hold.
Correct.
that we're laying down.
Correct. So that's important. Write that one down, kiddies. Forward oil creates the shape of the pattern. Reverse oil creates the amount of hold you are going to have in the pattern. Optimally, you are going to want about a 60-40 forward to reverse ratio, up to about 66% to 34%. If you really want to make a pattern that's going to hook, have at least 75% forward oil.
Or just have no reverse oil.
Hence me saying have at least 75% forward oil.
And that doesn't mean all patterns are going to be like that. I've bowled on
Sure.
100 to 0 forward. And I bowled on 75-25 reverse. So normally it's like a 60-40 though.
Yes. If you want to create a pattern that you're not going to have to adjust a lot during the course of the session, put a lot of reverse oil on the lane and spread it out. And we'll get to what I mean by spreading it out in a little bit. So if you have like a 50-50 ratio, you don't usually see patterns that have more reverse than forward, but they are out there. They certainly are out there, and you will see them, but it's not very normal. So our pattern here, this Statue of Liberty, it actually tells you how much forward and how much reverse is on here. So the forward oil is 15.64 milliliters, and the reverse is 9.09. So that is basically 15, 9 divided by 24 is 18 to about 30-ish percent. Right? What's 9 divided by 20? 25. Got your calculator.
36.
36. So we're at 64 to 36%, which is in that area. But we're talking about the reverse brush drop here. So what that means, reverse brush drop, what we're saying is when it's coming back, that brush will not hit the lane until it's at 40 feet. Why is that important to know? We'll talk about that a little later. Okay? But it's very important to know. Think about what the word taper means. Taper. All right. Going across, oil per board. On a lot of the new patterns that you see by Kegel, you'll see multi-ULs. Not very important for our purpose here. That just means the amount of oil that they could lay on the board at each pass, basically. The very first early Kegel machines could only do 1 UL. Then they started to be able to have a range of ULs, and now you could do multi, where like you could do 50 on pass 1, 45 on pass 2, 40 on pass 3, and so on and so on and so on. If we ever have a show where we talk about the advanced topics of the lane sheet, we'll get into mic speeds and stuff. But for now, we won't worry about that. So that is line 1. Is there any questions yet?
I got nothing.
Okay. So line 2, we already talked about the forward oil, and we already talked about the reverse oil. So then coming back across, we have the total oil. Total oil is basically just the sum of the forward oil and the reverse oil, which is the third thing that the experts like to look at. So they like to know the length of the pattern, where that reverse brush drop is, and the total oil volume that's on the lane. This is usually what they say is the most important thing to know. Even more important than the length of the pattern, which I found that a little surprising, to be honest. I'd have thought if I was ranking them, I would have ranked length first. But they seem to want to say that volume is first. Now, so we got 24.73 mils. Is that a lot? Is that a little? Is that in the middle? What is that? Any idea? In today's day and age, that would be about medium. Figure anything between 24 and 28 mils as a medium oil. 28 and above, heavy. Below 24 is light oil. Meaning in amounts. All right, makes sense? All right.
Makes sense.
All right. So, next line, tank configuration, we're not going to worry about it all. We don't really care how the tank on the machine is configured. Now, for most of you that bowl on the PJBT, you're not going to need to worry about what's coming up next because you're not going to know this. But if you go bowl other events where they release the pattern ahead of time, this is important. Very, very, very important. You can use multiple types of oil in the machine. Who would have thunk? For those of you that don't know, Kegel creates many, many, many different types of oils. that do many, many, many different things. Shocking, isn't it?
Yeah.
They make oil specifically for wooden lanes. They make different types of oils that will make the bowling ball or the patterns do specific things, believe it or not. So for this tournament that they used Statue of Liberty, they used fire in tank A and ice in tank B. Two different types of oils in their, I forget what class they call it, but there's 4 of them in that class. There's fire, ice, current, I think, and terrain is the 4th one. So, again, for purposes of PJBT, this isn't going to matter to you because A, you're not going to know what oil the bowling center uses. So, B, the chances that they have used more than one type of oil are slim to probably none. But if Junior Goal ever comes back out and wants to tell you what patterns they're using ahead of time, like they used to do back in the day, this becomes very important. So let's just for a moment say that we're going to a tournament and this is what we know. So tank A has fire and tank B has ice. Well, what does that mean? So what's the difference between fire and ice? Any idea?
I have an idea.
You have no idea.
Okay.
Well, in layman's terms, fire hooks. Fire is going to slow your ball down sooner and create more hook. Ice is going to hold up longer and not break down as quick. Ergo will keep your ball speed up. Ergo creates less hook. All right? So now let's remember that as we go to the next section, which I consider extremely important. That next section is not this big picture on the right. Not by a long shot. It's what's on the left. That's important to me. And it should be important to all of you. Especially line number 1. This is god awfully important. So the picture that's on the right, this monstrosity that I'm trying not to show, is basically a pictorial generated of what this is on the left. This is the meat and potatoes of the picture that's on the right. So, this is what the machine is going to do at different places on the lane. Very, very, very important, especially line number 1. Take notes, kiddies. Line number 1. So let's read from left to right. So we got start, stop, loads, mics, we're not going to worry about, speed, tank, crossed, start, end, feet, total oil. T oil is total oil. So start, line 1, 2L, stop, 2R. What does that mean? They can't see you raising your hand.
Well.
Go ahead. What does that mean?
So basically what that stands for is 2 left to 2 right.
2 left to 2 right. First off, how many boards are on a lane?
39.
39. Okay.
So what does that mean? I'm sure you're asking. So obviously we know 1 to 1 is the lane. You know, 1 to 20, then 20, so on. If you're a lefty, 20 back to 1. That would mean that it's laying oil down from board 2 on the right to board 2 on the left.
In this case, 2 on the left to 2 on the right.
Yeah. 2 on the left, 2 on the right.
All right?
So, and the second line goes into 13 to 13, and 14 to 14, 15 to 15, 16 to 16, and so forth.
And then we'll talk about 6 and 7.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
When we get there. So, in bowling terminology, you will hear people say a lot, they just want to know what's on the 2 to 2s. You'll hear that a lot. Just tell me what's on the 2 to 2s. This is the line that they're talking about.
That is pretty much one of the most important things when, if you don't see a pattern, but someone like knows it, how many 2 to 2s are there?
Yes.
That's all that really matters.
Yes.
And it tells you what you need to do, especially when you start.
Yes. This is your key. The next section is your key. Loads. So, from 2 to 2, it has 7 loads. Now, what, pray tell, does a load mean? So, let's just go over the rest of it. We're not going to worry about mic speeds. That goes back up to that variable volumes that we basically didn't talk about up at the top. So we're just going to skip mic speeds. Speed, 14, so that means 14 inches per second. So the machine in line 1 is traveling 14 inches per second. Tank A goes back up to the top. Tank A has fire oil in it. Boards crossed, 259. How do we get 259? Any idea? It's crossing 259 boards. What does that mean? If you know it, non-genetically proven son, shout it out. It's a mathematical formula. I think I just stumped you you thought you knew, and then I said it's a mathematical formula, and you just got this puzzled look on your face.
Thinking of it, we haven't discussed it yet.
Go ahead.
It's the start to the end of how long it's oiling multiplied by the boards that it's crossing per.
Right. So from 2 to 2 is 37 boards.
Right.
And there's 7 loads. 37 times 7 is 259. You don't believe me? Get out your calculator and multiply 37 times 7.
I'm gonna trust the account there. I'm gonna assume I don't need to do that.
So it's oiling on its first pass. Each line is considered a pass. 259 boards. Now, I just said that there's only 39 boards on a lane, though. And now I'm telling you it's oiling 259 boards when there's only 39 on a lane. Okay? So, start and end. So it goes from 0, which is your foul line, down to 11.9 feet. So let's just say 12 feet.
Yeah.
So in the first 12 feet, okay, the tubing that takes oil from tank A and transfers it to the brush, and remember the brush spins counterclockwise onto the lane, it's moving from 2 left to 2 right once, and then back 2 right to 2 left once. That makes 2 loads. Then it's doing it again from left to right. That's 3 loads. Then again, right to left, 4 loads. Again, left to right, 5 loads. Again, right to left, 6 loads. And then one more time, left to right, 7 loads in the first 12 feet of the lane. Does that make sense? So, in the first 12 feet of the lane, that tubing transferring oil from the tank to the brush went across all of the boards 7 times. That is a lot of oil that it put on the first 12 boards of the lane. Okay? I want to make sure that's clear. Under the total oil, look at that number. It says 10,360. It doesn't put commas in there. So you have to divide it by 100. So you get 10.360. So remember what our total mils were earlier.
24.73, if I remember correctly.
24.73 mils. 24.73 mils. And out of those 24.73 mils, it's laying 10.36 of them in the first 12 feet of the lane.
So it's laying 42% of our oil in the first 12 feet.
That is a lot of oil.
So we're taking a sixth of the lane and putting 46% of our oil in.
42%, I think you said.
Sorry, 42.
Yes. So, what is that going to tell you? There's a lot of oil in the front of the lane. Am I going to be laying the ball down at 15 and playing out to 5? What's going to happen if you put the ball down at 15 and get the ball out to 5?
It's going in the gutter.
It's going in the gutter. that it's going to do. When you see a lot of loads, the larger the number in pass number 1, the straighter you are going to need to play at the start of the tournament. Now, by straight, I don't mean I'm going to throw the ball right down 15. By straight, I mean I'm going to throw the ball right down 10. I'm going to throw the ball right down 8. I'm going to throw the ball right down 14. Whatever you find. So I'm playing what's known as, us old-timers, down and in. So my ball is going, let's just say I'm playing this pattern right down 10. Just for the sake of argument here. So we're throwing the ball right down 10. At the break point, it's at 10. So at the arrows, it's 10. At the break point, it's 10. That's what I mean by playing straight. The more loads you see on pass 1, the straighter you are going to play at the start of the tournament. Meaning you're going to have to come up the back of the ball more. And we'll talk about that when we get to the release portion of what we want to talk about. Okay, so that's pass number 1. All right, so pass number 2. It starts 13 board on the left and it goes to 13 board on the right. So again, it's crossing, there's 39 boards on the lane, and we're Xing out 12 on each side, 24. So that's leaving 15 boards. So from 13 left to 13 right is 15 boards. 5 loads. For pass number 2, that's a lot of oil.
That is.
So we're putting a lot, so think about it. And that goes down to 22 feet. So from 13 to 13, we have 12 loads of oil in the first 22 feet of the lane. Because on pass 1, we have 7 loads. Going down to 12 feet on pass 2, from 13 to 13, down to 22 feet, we have another 5 loads. There is a lot of oil from board 13 to 13 on this pattern. What that's telling me is I want to avoid playing 13 on the inside of the lane. Would you agree?
Correct.
So even though the rule of 31 tells me to be at 16, I don't want to be anywhere near it. I want to be outside of 13. Or else my ball just might slide and slide and slide and slide and slide some more. Pass number 3, it goes from 14 to 14. Now we only get to 2 loads. A break. If you notice, our speed went up to 18 inches per second. And it's only 5.1 feet, and it's only laying 1 mil of oil. So not a lot of oil from 14 to 14 on pass 3 in the mid part of the lane at 22 feet to 27 feet. Pass number 4, You see, we're kind of going in a Christmas tree here. Think of a Christmas tree. The bottom of the tree is wide, and as we go up, it gets skinnier and skinnier and skinnier. That's what we're doing here. Pass 4, board 15 to board 15. Only 2 loads again. Same speed, 18 inches per second. From 27 feet to 32 feet. And we didn't even lay a mil of oil. 8.8, so 0.88. Pass number 5, 16 to 16, only 1 load. Still staying at 18 inches per second, so it only crosses 9 boards. From 16 to 16 is only 9 boards. Just for 2.5 feet, and it laid 0.36 mils of oil. Then we get to lines 6 and 7. So all of a sudden, we went from 16 left to 16 right, back out to 2 to 2.
Correct.
But look at the loads.
0.
0. 0 loads. Our speed went up to 22 inches per second. It's not crossing any boards because even though it's 2 to 2, which is 37 boards, loads are 0. 37 times 0, for all you people that are not good at math, is 0. From 34.5 feet to 40 feet. And then, past number 7, we're at 2 to 2 again. The only difference here is the speed went from 22 inches per second to 30 inches per second. From 40 feet to 47 feet. So, we're going to come back to a picture of us for a second. So, let's explain what that means. What is that called, non-genetically proven son?
Buff.
Buff. That is called buff. What is buff?
What does that mean?
What is buff? We're not talking about the character from Back to the Future. Wait, that was Biff. Never mind.
Yeah.
Never mind. Go ahead. What is buff?
Well, buff could be considered as the extra oil that they didn't add any more oil, so we didn't put anything more on the lane. But what it is like what was left. What are you doing?
I'm had to pull back up. I closed the pattern by accident, so I had to move here for a second.
Oh, it's the extra that was left on the brush that just kind of just keeps going, but it doesn't really add anything else to it. So, like, back on the pattern when you have it again. So, on the first line, it says 2 to 2. So it applied oil from 2 to 2, then 13 to 13, but it is still buffing 12 to 2 on each side. So what that would mean is it's still, it still has oil on the brush, but it's not actually adding anything. So it's kind of tapers it off, if that makes sense.
That, for somebody that knows what you're talking about, yeah, that makes sense. If somebody has no clue what you're talking about, you probably just confused them more. So basically what it's doing is the brush is still hitting the lane, but there's no more oil coming from the tank to the brush.
Right.
So the only oil that's going out of the lane at that moment is what was still on the brush.
Right.
All right. So now there is only one brush on the lane, and it goes from 2 to 2. So the non-genetically proven son was right when he said on brush 1, oil is getting on the entire brush from 2 to 2. On pass 2, oil is only getting on the brush from 13 to 13. But if there's still residual oil on the brush from 2 to 12, it's laying just a minuscule amount of oil on that part of the lane. Very minuscule. Very minuscule.
So what this would be meaning is after 12 feet, we're getting buffed from 12 feet to 47.
From board 2 to board 12.
Yes, from board 2 to board 12, we're getting buffed. So that could mean a lot of different things, actually.
Yes.
We're going back to our lane services. That could mean all of a sudden, hey, the ball could come back from like 6 or 7. It's possible.
Hence why I said earlier we've seen this pattern play where you can get a ball back from 5.
I've played on patterns, not necessarily this one, but one similar where the length, I could play, boards 1, 2, 3, and it hooks.
Yes.
Just based on the lane surface.
Yes. So, when we talked about taper earlier, this is where taper comes in. So I want you to go back to pass number 6 for a second. So we're buffing from 34 feet to 40 feet at a speed of 22 inches per second. Then, on the 7th pass, we're buffing at a speed of 30 inches per second. Which the brush is moving at the same speed, the same RPMs. Now, the newest Kegel machines, the brush could move at different speeds. So that's just another level of knowledge you need to know. But for this discussion, we're not talking about that. So the brush is spinning at, let's just say the normal is 500 revolutions per minute. Is it going to hit the lane more at a speed of 22 inches per second or at a speed of 30 inches per second? 22. So that's what I mean by taper. So it's tapering off as it goes down. So tapering off. So if it didn't taper off, it would actually play harder than if it does taper off. Think about what's a great analogy for this? So think about if you're trying to walk in mud for a second. Is it easier to walk in mud that comes up almost to your knees compared to mud that comes up to your ankles? It's easier to walk in mud that comes up to your ankles. So you have to start with mud that comes up to your knees, and for every step that you take, the mud drops 2 inches. So for every step you're going, the mud tapers off, and it becomes a lot easier to move as it tapers off. A bowling ball is the same thing. As the buff and the oil taper off, the ball hits friction quicker, slows down, and begins to quote-unquote turn sooner. So a lot of people don't look at how the buff is working, and that's to their disadvantage. Make sense? Any questions? Is there any questions yet on our message board? Probably not. No one ever asks us questions.
No, there is not.
No, there is not. Why not? That must mean we're explaining everything perfectly. That must be what that means. All right. Going down. Now, this is the reverse oil. So, this is what it's doing as it's coming back up the lane. Back up the lane. So, pay attention here, because I don't really like how this is worded here, how they have this. So pass number 1, 2 to 2, no loads, speed of 30, tank B. Oh, different tank now. Boards crossed, but it says start of 47 and end of 34. I don't like that it starts at 47. Why is that? Why don't I like that? Any idea?
Because our reverse brush drop was 40.
Right. If we go back to the top, our reverse brush drop is 40. So the brush isn't getting transferred onto the lane until it starts at 40, not 47. So I don't like how they explain that there very much. To me, they should put a 40 there. I guess they just put a 47 there because the distance of the pattern is 47 feet. I don't know. I disagree with it. For me, it should say 40 to 34. Again, that's where your knowledge of the reverse brush drop comes in. Because again, it's all about taper. If your reverse brush dropped right at 47, are you going to have more taper or less taper? You're going to have less taper. When you have less taper, that makes the shot harder. Again, think of it because now you have to walk through the entire distance in mud that's up to your knees. Not at the end of it where it's at your ankles. Makes sense? Yeah, sort of, kind of. Yeah, maybe, yeah. Okay. Pass number 2. So now these, keep in mind, on reverse, the passes are in reverse. So pass number 2 is from 34 feet to 28 feet. So from 34 feet down to 28 feet down. So it's coming back up the lane. 14 to 14, 2 loads, speed of 22, tank B, and it's laying 1.17 mils. Pass 3, 13 to 13, 2 loads, 22 speed, tank B, 1.35 mils. Pass 4, 12 to 12, 2 loads, 18, so the machine slows down, so it could actually lay a little more oil. So you notice the feet that the machine moves isn't as much because it slows down. 5.1 feet, 1.53 mils. Fifth pass, 11 to 11, 2 loads, speed 18, 5.1, 1.71. Now, pass 6. Uh-oh. Back out from 2 to 2. Oh, boy. No, boy. And the machine slows down to 14 inches per second. Something you don't see a lot. At least I could be wrong, so I don't want to go where I'm going to go with that. We'll back up and pretend I never said that. The jury will disregard what I was about to say. And then pass number 7 is another buff pass from 7 feet to the foul line. Now, what's our takeaway with this? The biggest takeaway to me is now we're using tank B, which if you remember had ice oil. So we have fire down on our forward, and then we're laying ice on top of it, especially in the mid lane. So remember, our reverse creates our hold, and I just laid the type of oil that's the slickest.
Correct.
So I'm going to have a lot of hold in the mid lane, in the middle of the lane.
Correct.
Again, another reason for me, I don't want to be in there to start. I want to be outside of that.
I would tend to disagree for me.
Where do you... Wait, I've seen you play this pattern at board 5.
Okay, but I would tend to disagree. That's where I'd want... Like, if I'm just going to start at practice, I'm not going to start at board 5.
No,
I want to start,
absolutely not. You wouldn't.
Like, the way I like to bowl, it's different for everybody. I like to have hold because my genuine miss is left. So I want to have something where I'm going to have hold. If your genuine miss is right, you want to find something where you have a little recovery. So I want to have hold, so I try to play the spot where I can get hold.
All right.
That's just my personal way I like to play patterns.
So where would you...
I would try to have my break point around 10 on this pattern.
Okay.
So where if I get it to 11 and 12, it holds. And if I get it to 8, well, I deserve the washout that I get.
Okay. Well, 10 is perfectly fine because you're still outside of the hold.
Yes, but I want to start it in that hold.
So you're telling me you're playing, what, 13 to 10?
Yeah, 13, 14 to 10.
All right, that's fine. That's fine. Depending upon the lane surface, that could very easily work. But at your break point, you're outside the hold.
Yes.
For me, now none of you watching has probably ever seen me throw a bowling ball.
That's probably true. If Daryl's watching.
If Daryl's watching, he's seen me throw a bowling ball. If Papa Zombro is watching, he may remember me bowling from almost 30 years ago. I would never start the way you just explained it. Not a chance. Not a chance.
Well, because the way you throw it is very heavy.
Yes. And we'll get to that.
You can't start there, so...
No. There's not a chance I would be doing that. But we'll just get to that. All right. So, again, this part is the information needed to present to you this dumb picture. This dumb picture that's on the right.
All those numbers create that picture.
Yes, all those numbers create this picture. We're not even going to talk about this picture. We're just going to skip this picture because to me it's useless. Absolutely useless. So, now we get to the bottom. Which, by the way, shockingly enough, again, listening to these experts, they did not say that the loads of the 2-2s is one of their important things that they look at.
Oh, I know what their other thing that's important.
Sure, we're about to get to it. But to me, the loads on pass 1 is extremely important.
It is important on certain patterns.
The more loads you have, the more up the back of the ball you're basically going to want to start.
I certainly want to know if pass 1 is 5 or more. If it's 4 or less, it doesn't really matter to me, personally. But once we start getting to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I've seen 9.
Sure, absolutely.
I'd like to know that.
Yes. And you want to know the distance of pass 1. I mean,
Some pass 1s are 5 feet.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't really affect anything.
Right. If it has a 7, but it's only going to 4.8 feet.
It might affect it a little.
Unless depending upon what's on pass 2.
But if that's the first pass and pass 2 is, 2 loads, 2 loads, 2 loads, so on, the only thing that's going to affect is how it breaks down.
Right.
The heads might not go, so it actually would play quite difficult.
Potentially.
Because if the back ends break down, but the heads haven't, I've had that happen. It sucks. Because it's like, you can't really move left because your ball doesn't want to respond, but the second you move right, through the face.
As it should.
It's fun.
All right. So, explain the bottom.
Here. All right, well, if you zoom out, that would help.
I will. Just for you.
Well, maybe we could read the whole thing then.
Hold on.
So the bottom shows us kind of what we just explained. It shows us the view as...
Hold on.
Oh, all right. It shows us the view as if we were an ant and the oil could stack itself. That's kind of how it shows.
So if you took a squeegee mop at the end of the lane and drug all the oil up to the beginning of the lane and it stacked up.
That's what it would look like.
This is what it would look like. So Go ahead.
The turquoise color is our forward oil, and the dark blue is our reverse oil.
Yes.
Simple. So what this is showing us is obviously how much oil is on each specific board.
Yes.
As you can see, 1 to 1. There's no oil on 1 to 1. So we start at 2 to 2. So we can see our forward oil from 12 to 2 is flat on both sides, as it said up above.
10 to 2.
Our forward oil.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
Our forward oil is flat, just the turquoise color.
Yes.
And then it shows how much reverse oil is on top, as more in the middle, less on the outside. And on the left, this is showing us exactly what? How much? I'm missing the word.
Mills.
The mils. So we can see outside of 10, from 2 to 10, there are more than 3 mils out there. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
Anything more than 2 is starting to be a lot.
Yes. When you get above 3, it's another great indication you're not going to be swinging the ball to start the tournament.
No, probably not.
You are not going to be playing 15 to 5 normally to start the tournament.
And another good way, again, if you remember none of this, look at this picture and right where it cliffs. So we're looking at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That's also a pretty good indication where you want to play, in my opinion. Obviously, if we're trying to play straighter, we want to be towards that 10, 11 mark. We're trying to hook it a little bit, the 13, 14 mark. Because that indicates hold. The more oil, more hold. We explained that earlier. I don't know how much more to explain what that is.
Okay. What about what's right above it?
So what we're looking at above it, so we have outside track middle, middle track middle, inside track middle, middle inside track, and so forth. Basically, that means the numbers. Let's just focus on the numbers. Let's not worry about the words. You have the 3.05. What is that? So what we're looking at compared to that, up above outside track middle, it says 3 left to 7 left, to 18 left to 18 right. Okay. So what does that mean? So we're looking at the spots from 3 left to 7 left, compared to 18 left, 18 right. So what that is telling us, there is 3.05 times the oil from 18 left to 18 right, that is at 3 left to 7 left.
So it's a 3 to 1 ratio. 3.05 to 1 ratio to be specific.
Yeah, that's what it's telling us for boards 3 to 7 on the left. And it is the same on the right as well. If we go all the way to the right, 7 right to 3 right. They're the same. So now we go into the 2.67. That is showing us that 8 left to 12 left. So the next 5 boards to the right of that is 2.67 to 1. So a little flatter. And the same for the right. Now if we go into the 2 middle ones, we're looking at 13 to 17 left and right compared to 18 to 18, and that's 1.09. So that's telling us that it's about the same amount of oil from 13 to 13, basically.
Right. And of the experts, this is their 4th most important thing.
I would say they want to know the 3 to 7 compared to the 18 to 18, because it tells us, okay, so there's 3 times the amount of oil in the middle and the outside. That could mean something, depending on all the other things we looked at.
Yes. Yes.
Because since it's 47 feet, it doesn't mean a whole lot, because there's over 3 mils on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're looking at 41 feet and there's only 1.5 mil, that could mean a lot. That
Absolutely.
Could mean this is going to hook outside. Because your typical house shot isn't 3 to 1. It's more like 20 to 1 or more. So that would mean there's 20 times the amount of oil from 18 to 18 as there is 3 to 7.
Correct. This being 3.05 to 1 falls into the sport shot compliant by today's standards. Today's standards, you have to have less than a 4 to 1 ratio to be considered a sport shot. You have to be from 4 to 1 to 8 to 1 to be a challenge shot. And anything above 8 to 1 is a standard shot. So technically, your THS shot, your typical house shot, can be 8 to 1. It just never is.
Correct.
Or very, very rarely it is.
I can think of a few houses that might be like 12 to 1, 11 to 1. But typical, you're probably over 15, 20. I'm sure they're eventually you get to what would be called infinity to 1. But mostly they're probably between 20 and 30.
Yes. Now, as you know, on the PJBT, we bowl on a lot of what's called recreational patterns. There is no standard for recreational patterns, but recreational patterns typically are right from your 8 to 1 to 12 to 1 ratio. So I've always said for the good bowler, a recreational pattern is actually easier than a house shot. A lot of the good bowlers actually sometimes have trouble carrying on house shots.
Correct, especially for a college bowler.
Yes.
And we can explain why in our next segment.
All right, so that is our discussion on a lane graph sheet. Any questions? Any questions at all? Probably not. You guys don't seem to want to ever ask questions.
We explained it exquisitely.
We must have explained it perfectly for you guys not to ask us any questions.
All right, so pop quiz.
Pop quiz. All right, question number 1. What's the first thing you look for when you go into a bowling center? The bathroom. If you're old like me.
What are the 4 most important things on a lane graph?
Well, that's very debatable. Let's say 5 most important things.
5 most important.
So go ahead.
Not the picture.
Not the picture. So we got the distance. We got the amount of oil. We got the reverse drop brush. We have the ratio, especially the 3 to 7. But even the ones on the inside too. And how many loads are on that first pass? Those are your 5 most important things. So if you only remember anything and only take notes on 5 things, take notes on those 5 things. If you are a Team Phatts member, you better be taking notes on those especially 5 things. When I see you at Tournament 1, I'm going to ask for your notebook. You better have a notebook.
I will argue there is one more important thing, especially for good bowling.
Go for it.
How much reverse oil there is.
Understandable.
Because, obviously, as we explained, hold. Creates hold. But I think it tells me where to play.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of reverse oil. Probably going to be throwing, could be urethane, depending on the length, or something a little weaker.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of reverse oil, okay, I could get in and I could use something strong because I know I'm going to have that hold.
Mm-hmm. So, the one thing that I do want to mention, we're bowling on Statue of Liberty that has a lot of loads.
Correct.
So the one thing that I do want to mention, so we're starting to break down. Our first adjustments are typically going to be what's called parallel adjustments. So that's going to be kind of topic 2 of what we're getting into. What do I mean by parallel adjustments? Do you know what I mean by parallel adjustments? Non-genetically
You know
proven
what we
science?
mean by parallel
You
adjustments.
explain parallel adjustments.
So, Give me a line. What are we playing?
My bread and butter line, 12-5.
On Statue of Liberty.
We would not be playing 12-5 on Statue of Liberty.
Fine. We're not bowling on Statue of Liberty. We're bowling on our house shot.
Again, my bread and butter line that I grew up on, because I will tell you right now, I was a very low tilt bowler. Very low tilt. Extremely low tilt.
Yes. So we're bowling 12-5.
12-5.
Okay. So we're gonna make a parallel move. So we're gonna move one left parallel. So what does that mean? So we're playing 12-5. So 1-1 parallel would mean we're gonna play 13-6. 1-1.
So what we mean by parallel is we're moving our feet and our eyes and our mark and everything the same.
Exact same amount. So 2-2, 14-7, so on and so forth, however many you feel like moving.
Yes. So when you're bowling on a pattern with more loads in the front, typically your first adjustments are going to be parallel. We're not doing the 3-1 type move where you move 3 with your feet and 1 with your eyes. Your movements are going to be more parallel, not more angular. Make sense? Parallel, not angular.
Because we need to control the pocket.
Yes.
We need to make sure we're leaving makeables instead of splits.
Absolutely.
Especially early in tournament. Like on Statue of Liberty, I'd be perfectly okay if my first 2 games are 190-2-0.
Oh, absolutely.
For a scratch bowler. I would want to stick as close to 200, since that's scratch, as I can. Now, depending on our average, let's say we're a 180 average. If we're getting into the high 160s, that's amazing.
Yes.
Great.
Figure, again, remember, we said that was a sport shot pattern. Typically, you could expect to be 20 or so pins under your average on a sport shot on game 1.
Yes.
That's a great way to look at it. So if you average 190, if you shoot 170, you're in the ballpark of where you should be for game 1. Again, the idea on game 1 and game 2, until they start to break down, is exactly what the non-genetically proven son just said. You want to control the pocket. What do we mean by that? You want to control the number of boards you're crossing. I feel like I'm on the $25,000 pyramid here. Or I'm giving clues. So,
we want to find a ball that's not going to outhook. We don't want this. Bang. We don't want that. That's very hard to control because we're not going to hit the same board every time. We're human.
Speak for yourself.
So we need to find something where if we hit, let's say our mark is 10, where if we hit 9, 10, 11, we're going to hit the pocket.
Mm-hmm.
We may not carry, but that's what you're giving up by controlling the pocket. You're gonna sacrifice some carry. You might flat 10 a few times. You could 4-pin a lot more, flat 7s. Like a lot of people, they like to do to control the pocket is go to urethane. That seems to be the most common play of today.
In today's game, absolutely.
Especially with the purple hammer.
Yes.
But that is a way for people to avoid shooting as a scratch ball the 150s, the 160s, and it keeps us in the 180s, 190s, low 200s.
Yes. So, what kind of ball, we're bowling on Statue of Liberty, what kind of ball are we pulling out of the bag?
I want to pull something out that, one, is strong.
So we want to pull out a solid.
A solid. So we're going to pull out a solid cover stock. Ideally, if you have it, a shorter pin can help. But something that's going to read the pattern earlier. Because if we have it read at 47 feet, it's not really going to go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
We need something that's going to read up out of that buff area that we talked about earlier. We want something to read, 42, 43 if we can get it. So what we're looking for is a 2 to 3 inch pin if we have it.
Explain that, please.
A 2 to 3 inch pin would be how far the pin is away from the point of axis of the bowling ball, which means off your hand, the point that would be looking straight back at you. That's what your point of axis would be, so we want our pin to be about 2 inches away from that spot.
So, if this is our bowling ball, this is the middle, we want our pin. If you're a right-hander, your pap is going to be somewhere here. You want the pin more to the right, not to the left. To the right, maybe even down a little bit, depending upon where your pap is.
Our other option, and everybody that bowls tournaments would most likely have this, a pin down ball. That's also going to give us that early read.
Right.
Now, the advantage a 2-inch pin can get if you have it, what it's going to do is get into a roll very early, because the way it's drilled, everyone knows there's a core inside of a bowling ball. The core is going to get to the point where it's rolling quicker instead of flipping up and around. So once we get to that roll, the ball is going to start reading and rolling towards our pocket.
Correct. Okay, so we pull out our strong bowling ball, our solid. Let's just say the lowest pin that we have is 3 inches, let's just say.
That would be normal.
Okay.
I'd say a normal person's strongest bowling ball is about 3 to 3.5.
Okay, so we have one that's 3 inches. And we come out and practice. And we're practicing for a couple minutes. And we've stood in a couple different spots. And we haven't hit pocket yet.
Okay.
Okay. So now, that's the strongest ball we got.
Okay.
We only brought one solid with us. Because that's all we have. We brought one solid. We brought 2 pearls. We brought a plastic. We didn't bring urethane because we knew we weren't going to need it. Because we knew we were bowling 47 feet. So we brought a plastic ball for spares. We brought 2 pearls, which you probably wouldn't have needed. But we did. We brought 1 solid and we brought 2, what do you call them in the middle?
Hybrids.
So those are our 6 that we brought.
So my first question to that bowler would be, have you liked anything? Like, have you hit where you've been looking? Because, let's face it, there's times where I practiced, in the first 5 minutes, you looked at me, what do you see? Because I didn't hit it. I didn't hit the pocket. I didn't like anything I threw.
So the answer is yes.
So, okay, so I liked shots that I threw. Is it going high, or are we missing the head pin?
We're missing the head pin to the right.
Okay, so our ball's not hooking.
Correct.
So we need to put surface on it.
That's one thing we could do.
That's one thing we could do. Put some surface on it. Everyone knows what surface does. Makes it hook a little bit earlier, gives it that earlier friction.
Explain that in just a little more detail in case we have some 12, 13-year-olds that may be watching.
So, easiest way to explain friction, we have our stoling a bowling ball, sanding it down. There's different options from 4,000 all the way down to 180 grit. Like the grit of the sandpaper or what we're putting onto our bowling ball. So in easy terms, what it's doing is roughing up the edge of the bowling ball so it can give it some more friction. It's like, think of like brand new tires on a wet ground. That would be like a 180 to 500. And think of really dull tires on wet ground, they're going to slip. So think of that maybe more as like a 3 to 4,000. So we need something that's going to grip the lane and get through that oil. So we need something probably 180 to 500 depending on our bowler. Give us some earlier friction and maybe a little more hook. Another thing we could do is we could look closer. That has a similar effect. It's going to give us a little bit earlier of a roll. The other thing we could do...
I'll take over from here.
Let's say...
I will take over from here.
Specialty, I guess, there.
So, if you go back to my speech that I gave at Limerick on championship weekend, and I basically give the same speech every year. I tell everybody over the summer to practice, practice, practice. Summertime is the time where you up your average by 10 pins and you start working on different things. Okay? The other thing you could do is your release of your bowling ball. Staying up the back of the ball. Creating less tilt on your bowling ball. All right? So, let's talk about, a lot of people get confused about what is axis rotation and axis tilt. So let's explain what the two are. Would you like to explain it, or would you like me to explain it?
1 second. I'm going to draw this.
Okay.
There's a way to draw it
Mm-hmm.
on an XY axis.
Yep.
That helps us understand a little bit more.
Okay.
What we're looking.
A good way to think about it is the planet Earth, actually.
That's a good way to think about it.
Yes. Now, while he's drawing it, just give me a shot when you're ready. How do we practice different releases? And the students that I coach will all tell you the same thing. They all have something, even the girls. They all have footballs, because that's how you practice different releases. How do you practice the release of staying up the back of the ball, which is going to be what we want to do here, is you take that football and instead of, holding a football like this, where the football points this way, you want to take it underhand and turn the football 90 degrees and put the football right across your palm and toss it just like that. Toss. Where my hand never went to the side. It stayed directly behind the football. That is keeping your hand up the back of the ball. And we'll explain what that does after the non-genetically proven son shows me his incredible artwork that he's about to show.
Oh yeah, you see that artwork?
That looks like a person's face.
That is not.
It looks like a person's face. Go ahead.
What do you want me to explain first? Rotation or tilt?
Whatever you think is the best to explain first.
So, let's do tilt.
Okay.
I think that's a little easier. So tilt would be as easy as how much are we tilting the bowling ball
Mm-hmm.
on an axis like this. A 2D axis, we don't have to worry about a 3D. So just a 2D axis. So what we're looking at, so straight up and down. So straight up and down. So we're releasing it perfectly like,
Like I just explained.
That would be 0. That is actually bad. Unless we're throwing spares. If we're throwing a 10 pin and you have 0, you're going to be really good at spares.
Yes.
And then let's do it the other way. So we go sideways. If we're releasing the ball on that axis, that's 90 degrees. That's also bad. That means we're straight spinning it. The ball has no chance to ever really get some friction.
Because where's your pap?
Straight up and down.
Straight up and down.
So the ball is never really going to be able to flip and start rolling.
Right.
Just physically impossible.
Right. So again, go ahead. Finish your thought.
So we have a 45-degree angle. So we put it, now we're releasing it on this angle. That's, I'd say, average for our younger bowlers. I'd say somewhere between 30 and 50 is pretty average for our 8 to 12 girls. 8, 12, maybe 13. Go ahead with whatever you're going to
Go ahead. No.
So,
keep going.
we're getting... So what that means is it's still spinning a decent amount.
Yes.
It's going to hook, though, now. It will hook. But not nearly as much as if we kept going down. So the average house bowler, so the person who goes in and bowls, once a year, is from a study I heard, this is a while ago, about 8 to 10 degrees of tilt. So what does that mean? Our ball is tilted on about 8 to 10 degrees on the side, which if you had 8 to 10, that's really good for, so to say, our sport patterns. Our ball is going to be able to get into a roll very easy, because what it's trying to do in physics terms is get back to zero. The ball wants to be back at a perfect forward roll of zero. So the closer we put it to zero, the quicker it's going to get into that roll. And if we're bowling on something with a little more friction, so our house shots, our recreational patterns, we want to be almost to the 20, 25, or more, depending on how much friction there is, because we need to create the angle that our ball is going to snap off of.
So, again, think about it in terms of the Earth. We are in the summer months right now, here in the Northern Hemisphere. So what does the Earth do in the summer? It tilts as it revolves around the sun. And then in the winter, it tilts this way. So think of whenever we're talking about tilt, think of the Earth, how it tilts during the year. Tilt, 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 tilt. Now, changing your tilt, they say, is a lot harder than changing your rotation.
I would agree.
I didn't think it. I never thought it was. In technical terms, yes, it's certainly true. But changing your tilt isn't all that hard. Now,
no, it's not. But it's probably. It kind of depends. It's very. It's dependable on what the kind of bowler we're working with.
Yes. Now, so like we were talking about earlier about me, my tilt was maybe 5 degrees. Correct. Maybe. So go ahead.
You had a very, very heavy roll.
Yes. When I first learned to bowl, to throw a hook, and I had hardly anybody to teach me. There was one older gentleman that taught me some things. I was actually a full roller. What do I mean by a full roller? My track went directly between my fingers and my thumb.
That's what it would look like.
Yes, that was my track. I put on a wrist brace. Again, we're 13, 14 years old. And I wore a wrist brace for about 3 or 4 years. And my track eventually went right next to my thumb hole and right next to my fingers. And that was my track. And that allowed me to be able to do certain things with a bowling ball. That because of where I bowled and, back then, with the bowling balls that were out then, once the bowling balls got better, my scores just shot through the roof. I mean, I was a 220 bowler back in the mid-90s. Back when it was hard to be a 220 bowler. On a house shot. There wasn't sport bowling back then. So, where we were saying earlier, that's why my bread and butter on a house shot was 12 to 5. What would happen if you were to try to play 12 to 5 on a house shot?
I'd miss the head pin to the left. I might miss the 2 pin to the left as well, depending on what ball.
But because I had such a low tilt, that was my bread and butter. Now, I may have had a low tilt, but I had a decently high rotation.
You want me to explain that now?
Which, in about 30 seconds, which would allow me to be able to get the ball on a house shot, to go 12 at the arrows, get down to about 5 at about 45 feet, to 48 feet and just turn left. So think about that. Think about how I had to release the ball. I do have an old tape of me somewhere when I was like 18.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to find that tape just to be able to analyze how I did release the ball. That I could have such low tilt but such high rotation. Think about that for a second. I'll have to talk to you about that offline. About how you could stay up the back of the ball and yet snap through the ball. It's interesting. So go ahead, explain rotation now. So we talked about tilt, and now we'll do rotation.
So we're a little more of a 3D y-axis now.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to our 0. This was 0 tilt. This is also 0 rotation. We're going straight up and down. Now, back to where, let's do 90. So 90 on the tilt was a spin. 90 on the rotation would be a sideways 0, so to say. So we're sideways this way. So that would enhance, if you had a 90, it would turn to the left once it saw friction. Because imagine a tire going on this direction. Once it found friction, it's going to go left. And then our happy medium, 45, would be on a 45-degree angle. So rotation is easily described as take our 0 tilt and 0 rotation, but put it on the angle of the rotation we want. So take 0 tilt and put it on whatever angle, and that's how much rotation we would have. So 0, 45, 90, everywhere in between. Our average, I would probably say, is between 20 and 40 degrees of rotation. Some people like Pete Weber might have 60, which is why, and you, which is why he was able to succeed with the little power that he actually had. It was the rotation that was adding his power.
Yes.
Because we all know he didn't throw the ball with a ton of revs. He didn't throw the ball really hard. But he was able to keep up with the new guys.
Yep.
In the early 2000s and the early 2010s, when the likes of Belmo and all these power players started to get on tour.
He was an amazing talent for being such a beep.
So if we add both together, so now we have, let's say, 20 degrees of rotation with 20 degrees of tilt. So now our rotation would look more like this. And obviously nobody has 0 of one and a lot of the other. It's a happy medium between the two. I had roughly, whatever. I had roughly 10 degrees of tilt, but only about 30 degrees of rotation.
I think you had more than 10.
Now?
No, not with your college bowling days.
I would say back in high school, I was probably more about 18 to 30-ish.
No. Your high school...
30-ish rotation.
Oh. Here, I thought we were just talking about tilt. Okay.
18 tilt to 30 rotation.
Okay, fine.
Our really good professional bowlers are probably in the 40 to 50 degrees of rotation, and they could manipulate their tilt to however they want.
Right.
They could be 5 degrees if they need it, but they could also be 45 degrees if they need it. Right. So they can have a rotation from here to here.
Yes.
So, and each and every degree in between is going to change how our ball reacts.
So why, going back to our example of bowling on Statue of Liberty, do you want a lot or a little rotation?
Depends.
And
you probably want
tilt.
A little less rotation with a little less tilt.
Yes.
Because that's going to control how hard the ball is going to come off the pattern with a rotation. Because the more rotation, the harder the ball is going to turn left. But we also want that low tilt so we can get something to read a little bit earlier.
Yes. Now, as we stated before, it is harder to control tilt. So think of it this way for a second. So we're holding our bowling ball underneath. So to create rotation, now I'm just going to put my hand on top of my thumb. To create rotation, we want to keep our thumb from turning up and down. Sideways is fine. The more sideways creates your rotation. When your thumb starts to move downward, that creates your tilt. So again, I'm just putting my hand on top of my thumb. As soon as my thumb starts moving from 12 o'clock to 11 o'clock to 10 o'clock, that's creating tilt, creating spin. When my thumb could stay here or here, and my hand could come around the ball without my thumb moving downward, that's creating your rotation. For an easy way to explain it. There's a lot of YouTube videos that explains how to get more rotation on a bowling ball, but for bowling on Statue of Liberty, we want to stay up the back of the ball as much as possible because it's the easiest to control. Until the lanes start to break down.
Then we would want to be able to add some more rotation because
Correct.
Physics say the more rotation we have, the better our carry is going to be.
Correct. Exactly. So, as we stated earlier, you are giving up a little bit of carry on the front end to leave more makeable spares. Because think about it. How many times have you come out and you find it a lot easier to hit the pocket come game 5 of qualifying compared to game 1 of qualifying? You have a lot more miss room in game 5 than you do in game 1. Right? Think about that. Be honest with yourself. It's a lot easier when you're staying up the back of the ball to not miss what you're trying to do. So you're going to carry less staying up the back of the ball more, but you're going to create less misses when you're staying up the back of the ball more. So instead of shooting that 230 game, you might shoot that 190 game, which is perfectly fine on a hard pattern. Now, if you're going to bowl on an easy pattern, well, then, yeah. But on a hard pattern like Statue of Liberty, you know.
If you told me game 1 I could shoot 195 on Statue of Liberty, I'll take it.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Yes.
Because how many times have you gone into a tournament, bowled a tournament, come out of it, and said, man, first game I had 4 splits. Well, if we knew how to stay up the back of it, maybe we would only left 1.
Right.
And maybe that could have been the difference between making cut, making finals, being the 1 seed. It could mean a lot. Because how many times have we gone into a tournament, and after 8 games of qualifying, or 5 games, 3 match play, missed the finals by 2, 3, 4, and it could go all the way back to game 1 because we did something wrong.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. So we're in game 1. So we're being a little more conservative, so that means we're leaving more spares. So, have we been practicing our spares over the summer? The worst thing you can do in practice, the worst thing,
is reset the rack.
Is reset that rack. That's the worst thing you could do. You always shoot your spares. Always. I'm going to give you a really simple spare making technique for people that do not know yet how to throw straight at spares. I would suggest you all learning to throw straight at spares. If you get this technique down, technically, you don't even really need a plastic spare ball. Technically. And wouldn't that be nice for going out to junior gold if you don't need to take a plastic spare ball with you? Because you're limited to 5, right?
Certainly very nice to learn to throw urethane. And if we're not, maybe we're not good enough for urethane, well, let's take our weakest reactive ball.
Yes.
And figure out how to shoot spares with it.
What I'm going to teach you is to shoot spares with the ball you're throwing a strike with. Because if you know what you're doing, that could be your spare ball very easily. Because think about it, you're going out to junior gold now. You know you're going to hit a short pattern. You know you are. So you're going to want that urethane ball. I know some of my students want to fight me, and you know who you are if you're watching, and you better be watching, about getting a urethane ball. And I'm telling you, you should have a urethane ball, preferably that purple one that has a hammer on it.
Either that one or a pitch black. Those are probably the 2 best.
Preferably that purple one that has a hammer on it.
Yeah, that one's pretty good. That one's pretty good.
Let's just say it right now. Back in my day, I had the light blue one, and that ball was just phenomenal. That and the blue Ebonite Nitro were my 2 favorite urethane balls ever. My scores just went through the roof with those balls. But anyway, that's just taking a walk down memory lane. So think about it. You're bringing your urethane ball. You're going to bring your plastic ball. That leaves you 3 balls. So what are you going to do? Bring 1 solid, 1 hybrid, 1 pearl?
I'd certainly like a little wiggle room. I'd like to be able to have, depending on, since you get to throw whatever you want for practice, having either 2 solids, most likely 2 solids. 1 pin up, 1 pin down, or 1 short pin, 1 normal pin, whatever. Because they're all hard. They're all very hard. So we need to be able to control our pocket. Because if you shoot 190 every game of junior gold, you're probably going to do pretty good.
At least you're going to be cashing.
You will be making money.
Yes. To me, if I'm setting up my junior goal and I don't need to bring that plastic ball because I know what I'm doing shooting spares, I'm bringing one urethane, 1 pearl, only 1 pearl, and then either 2 hybrids or 2 solids, and then one of the other. Because you know you're going to hit 1 short, 1 long, 2 medium, and then whatever else they want to put out for the advancers round, which is usually mediums after that, primarily.
It would all depend on the short for me. If I hated my urethane, I
Sure.
may not even put urethane in my bag.
Sure.
Because I have gone a tournament on house. 8 games.
Mm-hmm.
I threw 1 ball.
Talk for a minute. I'll be right back.
So it was, what was it, 2016?
Yeah, something like that.
We were bowling on house. And, what would you normally take to your house? A few balls, and you have your plastic ball for spares. Correct? Correct. And then, I didn't throw plastic that tournament. I didn't throw anything other than 1 ball. I threw 1 ball for my strikes, for my spares, for 8 games. And I missed 1 makeable.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was a 10 pin.
It was.
But that was the time of my life where I started to learn to throw whatever I had in my hand at my spares.
Yep.
Where I threw everything straight, but I didn't like plastic. I still don't like plastic to this day because I hate the feel of it in my hand. It's too slippery. So I like the tackiness of urethane. And or whatever's in my hand. If you tell me I can't throw urethane at spares, fine, I'll throw whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have no problem throwing anything in my hand.
Okay, so I'm going to take you all the way back to the year 1989. Who here watching the show was alive in 1989? 1989, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. We had a rhino in the White House. We had no internet. And I was going into my senior year of high school. I was asked from the bowling center that I was bowling junior leagues in if I would become a coach because they were starting a coaching program. So I learned to become a coach. The very first thing we learned, other than where the bathroom was, yeah, I had to know I was going to say that, was what was called the 3-6-9 spare method. And to this day, 2021, I still teach the 3-6-9 spare method. Now, I will say, I will be the first to admit that there needs to be some adjustments made to it on sport patterns. For sure. But if you're bowling recreational patterns on the PJBT, you could throw the 3-6-9 spare method and be reasonably assured, as long as you are accurate, you are going to make your spares. So what is the 3-6-9 spare method? This is very easy. Simple. For every pin that you are away from the head pin for your spare. So let's say you leave the 2 pin. The 2 pin is 1 pin away from the head pin, right? So you got the head pin, then you got the 2 pin and the 3 pin. Those are both 1 away. You got the 8 pin and the 9 pin. Those are both 1 away because they're right behind the 2 pin and the 3 pin. Then you got the 4 pin and the 6 pin.
Oh, there we go.
Then
so
you got
the middle with our head pin.
Yeah. Then you got the 4 pin and the 6 pin. And then you got the 7 pin and the 10 pin. And then he left out the 5, the 8, and the 9.
Those aren't important.
For each pin you are away from the head pin, you move 3 boards in the opposite direction. And you still throw your strike line.
Correct.
I will guarantee you, bowling on recreational patterns, if you throw the 3-6-9 spare method, and as long as you hit your strike line, you are going to make your spare. I will guarantee you that with 100% accuracy, you will make your spare. Especially if you're shooting at single pins. I will not guarantee 100% accuracy if you're shooting at a 2-8 and you move 3 right.
Yeah.
Because you can miss the back pin. But if you're shooting at a single pin, you move 3-6-9, I will guarantee you, you will make your spare. 100% of the time, including the 10 pin. As long as you hit your mark, throw the ball the same way.
Everybody's favorite pin.
Mm-hmm. Got thirsty, been talking too much for too long. Heck, we've been doing this for 2 hours now.
Yeah, we done?
Just about.
Just about. A minute.
So, let's wrap this up. Because I did want to do this no longer than 2 hours. I got work tomorrow. Coming off my...
Why?
No, you got... I won't say it. Band camp.
You know what?
But you don't play an instrument, but you still got band camp.
Yeah, I'm a video guy. Video and photography employee.
Are you going to take video of the girl playing the flute?
Not allowed to take video.
Yes, you're not allowed to take photos of their faces because they may not make the team yet. Blah, 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 blah. All right. So, next Sunday at 3 o'clock, Josh and I on the PJBT channel will be doing Season 23 preview show. Sunday at 3 p.m. For those of you on Team Phatts, I could tell you right now, I will be looking for your notebook at tournaments. I want to see notebooks. What do you write down in your notebook? Well, 829, bold at 222 Dutch, because that's where the tournament is at. What kind of lanes do they have at 222 Dutch? What kind of pattern did we bowl on? This is where I stood. This is the lanes that I bowled on. This was my ball reaction. This is the ball that I threw. We could talk for another 2 hours on what you should do during practice. How in those 10 minutes of practice you should be able to find 2 lines. You should be able to find 2 lines during practice. How many times have you gone to practice, you have thrown a strike, you threw another strike, and you didn't try anything else? How do you know that was the best line for you? If you are bowling on where your starting lanes are in the single digit, meaning you're bowling scratch, you better be able to find 2 lines in 10 minutes.
Ideally.
At least 2 lines in 10 minutes.
Ideally. On our rec patterns, you could probably find 5, 6. On our sport patterns, I'd like to be able to find, I'd hopefully find 2.
Yes.
Sometimes, I mean, bowling is just an educated guess. All educated guessing.
Yes. That you could look at the next time you're going to go to that center. I would keep them in the cloud as well, so you could get back to them very easily. It's great to know, we bowled on Easy Street today. Well, on Easy Street, this is where I normally stand. This is where I normally stand when I'm on SPLs. Today, we bowled on Main Street. Today, we bowled at Clearview. Normally at Clearview, I know that I have to play 3 boards right of where I normally play at my own bowling center, I've found. Keep notes. Keep notes. That's the one thing. When I walk through bowling centers watching you kids, I only see 1 or 2 of you taking notes. I'm going to tell you this. Watch the women's tour sometime and watch how many of them take notes. I watched it last week when they were at the training center for their tournament. Dasha Kovalova was taking notes during the finals. She was in the final match for the championship, and she was taking notes after every other shot. She was taking notes. If she could do it in the finals, and she's a professional, you should be doing it during a tournament. At the end of every tournament, when you're home on Sunday night, take notes. I will be looking. If you are on Team Phatts, you better have a notebook. You're going to do 10 jumping jacks. And you're going to have to come repave my driveway.
And find me the bathroom.
And find the bathroom. Buy me a soft pretzel. So, of course, we've gone 2 hours and no questions from the audience. None. That's very disappointing. I know we're good, but we're not that good.
Yeah.
So we'll keep this on for another minute or 2. Because, again, I know there's a delay. In case anybody actually has any questions. Don't forget, like I said, next Sunday is the Season 23 preview with Josh and I at 3 o'clock on the PJBT YouTube channel. 3 o'clock. And then the following Sunday, we start off Season 23 at 222 Dutch. For those of you going to the Danny Weisman tournament, entries are open and being taken for that. Do not hesitate. You do not want to get shut out. I will be at that tournament this year.
I will not be.
I know.
I'll probably be at a football game.
I'm sure you will be. I'm sure you will. Taking pictures of the flute player.
Where in the country? I have no idea.
It's like October 8th, 9th, 10th, whatever that weekend is.
All right.
Now you know.
We're going to tell you where I'll be in the country.
Well, it's not like you're going to the University of Cal Santa Barbara for a football game.
I'll be in Iowa.
Iowa. Looking at corn.
Hey, that baseball game was good.
That was a good game. I love that the Spankies lost at the end. That was great. That was awesome. They come back, score 4 in the top of the ninth, take the lead, and then lose. That was awesome. That was awesome. All right, so I hope you liked our show. I hope we were able to explain stuff to you. If you have any questions, feel free to contact either Daniel or I, and we will answer them for you. If you would like to be a member of Team Phatts and you are not a member of Team Phatts, membership is always open. It doesn't cost anything to be a member of Team Phatts, but you do got to pay homage to me. You do have to promise to nickname your first child Phatts.
There you go.
Yes. If you want any information on being on Team Phatts, again, contact Daniel or I. We do have a TV show here on YouTube, so I guess we have an internet show here on YouTube. We don't talk about bowling very often, I will say that. It's not always rated PG either, so watch with, we don't beep things out either. Like I said, we rarely talk about bowling. We do talk about sports, and we talk about politics. It gets a little loud sometimes.
It can.
Daniel shouts a lot.
Oh, yeah. I get heated.
You do get heated, all right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for spending a couple of your hours on a Sunday night with us. We will look for you next time we do Phatts TV. And remember, as we all do with Team Phatts, where we go one,
we go on.
have a great evening, guys. See ya.